sociologists are saying that currently the world is at a tipping point. We're living in a century where 60% of the population is now urban. It is the speed and scale at which urbanization is taking place, and the sheer size of cities at present presents these huge challenges, which we, especially as an NGO, and the NGO world is not really prepared for. The summit is the first urban summit World Vision International is holding to explore, to have a dialogue, to have discussion and debate about what is the role of NGOs in this urban century. This is an unexplored territory, and we want to be partners to address sustainable urban development, to address the issues that are compelling today. There is issues of safety, of employment, issues of sanitation, of protection, of education, of participation. We want to explore during this summit various voices from agencies like UN Habitat, from local agencies, from the community members themselves, to inform us of the role we can play in the future to address the whole issue of urban poverty.
Yes, we know that urban contexts are pretty complicated, and because of that I think it's very important to understand their multi-dimensional nature across all spheres: the social sphere, the governance, the physical, both the terrain, the actual physical geography, as well as the infrastructure that exists, where it exists in cities, not the same. The environmental issues, planning, and perhaps more importantly, the drivers of the city, which are the people.
Children are the first casualties of urban poverty. Dense housing in relatively small areas, it results in this proximity that is detrimental to health and well-being. Diversity, never before have we seen social, ethnic, political, religious, economically diverse groups living in very close proximity, and that is creating tensions and fragmentation.
First and foremost, we need to improve our understanding of the scale and nature of exclusion. We need to promote inclusive cities.
More than 1 billion children, almost half of the world's children, live in cities, and millions of these children are living in slum conditions. As a child-focused international aid agency, World Vision has developed a Cities for Children framework. It incorporates World Vision's key development domains to drive healthy, safer, prosperous, and resilient cities for children. Central to this approach is the focus on advocacy for justice and equity in the city.
Our project is focusing on local economic development in Orlando East. Unfortunately, in Orlando East is densely populated. Though we're focusing on economic development, you cannot, develop people to become entrepreneurs without addressing their social issues.
We, as a forum of small businesses, we were born out of frustration. We couldn't access services, we couldn't access government opportunities. A big chunk of us were involved in a project which was an infrastructure rehabilitation program. They didn't have systems and policies in place, and then that's where the World Vision came in, and they assisted us in formulating those policies and putting together systems in place.
We are concerned about issues on informal settlement upgrading. Part of the work that we're doing with the World Vision is to bridge the social gap between these two communities. One of the things that we have developed is the urban development framework. 2, to promote public participation, but 3, to identify economic opportunities for these communities.
What makes a good partner in an urban economic development program?
For us, as Planet, our partnership with World Vision in Orlando, it's premised on a couple of points. One is that there must be synergy on the work that we do. it's very critical that we have two organizations in particular. We have this peer support to each other. Also, it's about sharing a common vision for urban development. We bring certain skills, knowledge, capacity into the relationship. We might be coming from different perspectives, but the ultimate goal is to see a prosperous area, making sure that there's development in the urban setting. So the common vision is the glue that holds us together.
South African unemployment percentages are in double digits. About 48% of those people are young people between the ages of 18 and 34. So those people, when they get frustrated with not being able to get any kind of formal employment, the next thing that they do, they start their own companies. Now, fortunate for us, then, government is also focusing on women, youth, and people with disability. So when we approach government and advocate, we advocate for the young people, for women, and people with disability.
You can't not work with youth. They have many capacities. They need to be built, and they need to be recognized now.
Our vision for the children in Nairobi City and in the whole country at large, we wish to see a safe place where children can stay peacefully, free from child labor, child abuse, drug trafficking, and many other forms of abuse.
There are multiple protection issues actually that are being faced by children and youth and women. For example, the fragmentation of families. This makes children and the youth even lack the kind of support structures that those who have family actually enjoy, and increases their vulnerability.
World Vision was the partner of choice of UN Habitat for implementing a baseline study, looking at the perception in relation to vulnerability to safety, lack of urban services, and violence. So, in partnership with the municipality of Beirut, we conducted this assessment in 2 communities that are marginalized in Beirut. When we are talking about citywide programming, we want to address the issue of safety and security at city level. How to make sure that those different diversities that are relevant to the urban communities within the city are taken into account? How do we ensure that the developed action plan really captures the voice of the youth and children and women and those who are really most vulnerable?
In the Safer Cities experience, poverty is not the cause of crime. It's what underlies poverty, which is social exclusion. And social exclusion enables you to begin to think about the ways in which you can actually address crime and violence, particularly where it concerns young people. Safety is less and less becoming a criminal justice-oriented response issue, and it is more and more being pitched as an issue of better urban governance, better urban planning, better urban management. The different risk levels that define youth today require definitely different solutions and different applications to drive them into more productive livelihoods. A street child cannot be treated in the same way as an unemployed youth. Neither can a substance abusing young person fit the same context as a child in war-affected situations. Territory today is not just a physical construct. It also provides us an opportunity to understand the different types of conflicts you see within that particular territory, whether they're gender conflicts, whether they're intergenerational conflicts, whether they're intercultural conflicts. This is the reason behind the establishment of the UN Habitat Safer Cities program. It is based on a rigorous diagnosis of safety, which informs the development of a strategy and action plan that is defined by the coalition of actors. And that is the process that begins to move a city from just a government-led approach only to a multi-level governance approach, which includes a national policy that drives urban and in which safety is anchored. We also need a more multi-sectoral conversation that is also built with community experiences informing the way policy is shaped, where even children and youth find their place and space in the way the city functions from a planning, management, and governance perspective.
The city of Nairobi has 70% of the young people are unemployed, and majority of them live in the informal settlement. We have a youth resource and information center where the youth access information with support of the UN Habitat. They come and get information. They're able to search for jobs. And the county uses that center to reach the youth and discuss issues of urban safety and many other issues. We are also having a program on good school, good neighborhood, where we are focusing on a school, particularly in the informal settlement, as the center of safe communities, where we use the school to reach the community. On the side of enhancing safety, we are reclaiming and rehabilitating public spaces in the city so that we make them livable and accessible to all, making them available to the youth that is not employed and they are able to come and interact. We are also putting around those public spaces Wi-Fi where they can reach and come and access internet.
As the governor of Nairobi City, probably speaking more domestically to World Vision in Kenya and the region, is that I'm looking forward to working with you because we are part and parcel of this community.
Unplanned urbanisation poses major health challenges for children and their families living in informal settlements and slums. They are often denied access to clean and safe water, or are affected by overloaded water and sanitation systems and inadequate waste disposal facilities. This increases children's vulnerability to disease and consequently malnutrition. We need to integrate urban planning, governance and the built environment in addressing health inequities.
Seeing this context and seeing that the country is very prone to having another crisis in 10 years and seeing a very high number of civil society organizations that are found. So what role would World Vision play in such a context, knowing that a disaster is coming in 10 years? How can we be prepared, especially that we're very known to be good at responding and in the recovery phase, but we're not really strong on resilience building?
I want you to think a little bit about how cities change. How do they develop or how do they redevelop? Are we talking about design issues? Are we talking about spatial issues? Are we talking about the functional issues that exist in urban systems? Think a little bit about the role of World Vision in the various different capacities that World Vision has in terms of its work in humanitarian situations, but also its longer-term development work. Think a little bit about how do we become a bit more strategic in the way we intervene in the work that we do before crises or after crises. These are the things that impact on resilience.
Rapid urbanization is a reality which we need to face. The statistics is saying 37% of Dhaka's 18 million people live in slum or semi-slum conditions. That's about 8-9 million people, of which half of them are children. For us, the main thing that we had to do was to include urban programming in our country strategy. We've been working in urban settings for 42 years in Bangladesh, but in a way it was neglected. If it's not in your strategy, you're not going to progress.
It's time to think urban. This is what we have put in that panel. And I'm very happy and honored to be here today and to share our campaign work at UN Habitat. And I would like to thank Joyati to spearhead this new urban agenda for World Vision. It is very timely to have a strategy that includes the children in the urban agenda globally. So the World Urban Campaign is primarily a global platform on cities, and we have a slogan. It is, I am a city changer. The World Urban Campaign partners have actually defined what is a sustainable urbanization. An inclusive city is a fundamental one. You need to include everyone to start building equity and to achieve a just city.
To truly be urban ready, what adaptations, what adjustments, what changes do we need to make? Now, thankfully, as we've heard, we've got a long history and a present of a lot of excellent urban work. We don't want to think that we have to solve every single systemic or policy challenge in order to move forward.